Hi, folks. We're Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. this essay, I'd like to talk about the claim being put about by the pro-globalist, pro-mass migration propagandists that between 35 and 40% of all mass migrants are actually entrepreneurs. They're genius business people. These guys raise business to a new level of genius. They're entrepreneurs on fucking steroids. They're business people on speed. I'm like, wow. And without these people, the Western economies, the United States in particular, would be fucked. Absolutely fucked. These people bring the vibrance, the fucking vibrance to the business sector, without which there would be no business at all, or hardly any. And what's your evidence? Well, look at Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a migrant. There you see Elon Musk. So it's the same as saying, I don't know, let's say that, Beethoven was deaf. So we should bring all the deaf people in the world to the United States, because then great symphonies will be written. Great symphonies. Beethoven's ninth. Well, are you saying Beethoven wasn't deaf? Is that what you're saying? You fucking Nazi. So that's the logic here, that because Elon Musk and because, I don't know, what's it, Sergey Brin or something, because they have, or supposedly in the Brin's case, I think he was just a front boy for the boys with the money downtown. But nonetheless, this idea that the all these illiterate peasants from the third world with an IQ of 70 suddenly become business geniuses once they arrive in the West or arrive in the United States is beyond absurd. I mean, does anybody believe that bullshit? Like anything, there's a small group of people when they come to the United States, and whether it's you look at the big inventors in the United States who the Alexander Graham Bells and the big shaker movers in the electricity thing and so on, they were all European, or pretty much. Very few of them were locally born in the United States. So you could argue that high-skilled people, when they come to a country that's a big market and prepared to look at new ideas, and there's venture capital around the place, that somebody like that's likely to do, Tesla and that sort of, likely to do better in the US than they would if they stayed in parts of Europe where, who is more important than anything else. And there are probably more opportunities for someone of an entrepreneurial, certainly then, entrepreneurial disposition there might be in say some of the older, more staid economies, particularly in the areas of say new technology and new frontiers, new inventions. But let's just have a look at the claim. Between 35 and 40% of all migrants in the US are entrepreneurs. Now that's manifestly false. Manifestly false. It's the same. They all calling them doctors and engineers and rocket scientists. Or where black gangsters are involved in professional criminals, black gangsters are involved in a shootout in the downtown area, and they say, and he wanted to be an architect. Yeah, sure he did. So this is all, hyperbole and propaganda and just absolute, total, utter bullshit. There is a tiny, tiny sliver of the people coming into the United States or the West generally who may have make any contribution to startup businesses of any substance, and they're pretty much all going to be white. They're going to come from other white countries. So this idea that mass peasant migration is going to bring masses of entrepreneurs in, but it depends how you define entrepreneur. Now, one thing that surprised me when I used to go to third world countries, they would claim their unemployment rate was 10 or 15% or something like that, which was clearly not the case. It was their unemployment rate was probably 70% higher, and they were incapable of generating jobs. But most people would have they would rent a food cart and they would cook kebabs or something. They would cook some sort of a food side of the road, and thus they were classified as self-employed. So there were people that would stand on the corner next to the polluted rivers in Jakarta, for example, and they would wash dishes. And so there was this strange sort of subcontracting system that existed in the third world, where they tried to distribute any work amongst as many hands as they could. And all of these people sort of downstream, they were all classified as self-employed. So you could argue that unemployment was really 10 or 15%, and that really you had all these self-employed people, all these entrepreneurs, all these super creative people. Now, the reality was, of course, that there was no creativity or anything at all. You had to belong to the certain tribe or the family. You had to get permission from the godfather. A whole lot of things went on. So these people were hardly entrepreneurial or self-employed. Now, when these people from the third world or the lower end of the, even the middle economies, like Russia and so on, when they come to the West, they're very much tied to, if you like, the mafia groups, the organizing groups that pretty much organize business affairs as much as they would in their home country. For example, if a Chinese outfit does nail painting, or you have a nail salon, or some manicure pedicure salon, something like that, all the products they buy, they must buy them from another Chinese supplier. The people they employ, they must get them from a Chinese labor hire firm, and so that it's completely locked in. Now, the labor hire firm guy is technically self-employed. He's just arrived from China. Look at that guy. He set up that labor hire business. And as soon as he got off the plane in Australia, I went, wow, what an entrepreneur. What a businessman. What a fucking genius business guy. No, stop. He's all part of the wider mafia grouping that comes over, and they're all sort of reporting into the big godfather who organizes things. You will do this, you will do that. So none of these people have started up a business at all. It's just a round robin system to keep all the money in Chinese hands, so it doesn't go out anywhere else. There's nothing there that's meritorious or based on people's business acumen or their MBA, Harvard, or something. And there's nothing like that. It's just all a tightly organized little social money social circle that's kept along racial group lines, family lines, that sort of thing. And so even though there's technically they're self-employed, technically they've started a business, it's in fact none of these people are starting a business at all. So this idea that if somebody, for example, they give it offshore money to buy a franchise, it could be a takeout food franchise or something like that. They're self-employed. They started a business since they were, well, no, they didn't. They just are using offshore mafia money to buy up an existing franchise or something like that, and they're not self-employed. And there are numerous organizations that move to franchise models. There's a company that sells, men's toiletries and shaving products and things like that. They had, 500 stores Australia-wide. And then an Indian financial company bought into them and then started to franchise off all the stores. And every one of them went to an Indian. I don't think there's any of these stores left that haven't been, where Indians haven't been slotted in. Now, technically, again, look at this Indian lady. She came off the plane the very next day. She bought this business, and she's a businesswoman. She's an entrepreneur. And no, it's nothing like that at all. Far from it. There's offshore again. The offshore money. The Indians kept it 100% within the Indian family, or the Indian, with people with the proper genetic background were given these businesses, and then they're put into debt. I know a few sort of Russians that came in the earlier days to Australia, and they spoke poor English and this, that, and so they couldn't get normal jobs. They knew that, and the Russian mafia knew it. So they would say, okay, we'll start up a restaurant, or like a corner store, and take out food shops, something like that. And they could get money from the Russian mafia, but they had to pay a 25% interest rate. And the consequences for not payment or slow payment were pretty dire. And you could lose your legs or something. So that it's quite a brutal sort of thing. So this particular Russian family, they started up. I don't know whether they bought it or they started it up, but they got this like takeout food type thing. But in order to make money, only the family could work there. They couldn't afford to pay anybody any wages. So they're all working very long hours, 7 days a week, 6 in the morning until 10 at night, and this sort of thing, longer hours even on Friday and Saturday. And they had to do that for, I don't know, probably 3 years of living like that. And they had to eat, they didn't have any food. They had to live in a one-room apartment, all of them, like 3 kids and mum, dad. But at the end of 3 years, they paid the money back, however much it was they borrowed, I don't know. And they paid the money back to the mafia, so they owned the shop outright. And then they had the choice: do they open up another shop and try and repeat that success? But this time they wouldn't need to borrow at 25% interest rates and so on. But this was, they did that not because they were business people. None of them had any experience in business. They didn't do it because they were business people. They did it because there was no other option and they had to. So they weren't entrepreneurs with great ideas. They just got some takeout food shop. It doesn't make you an entrepreneur. And only by working 80, 90-hour weeks each were they able to make it happen. Which they did quite successfully. I mean, I kind of admired them for doing that. But also, as a Chinese guy starts up a toilet cleaning company, but he's actually given a contract from only Chinese-owned buildings where and so they've set this up like it's a fake dummy company just so they can round robin and launder money back and forth between their the Chinese groups. Again, they're not entrepreneurs. So how many of these people are entrepreneurs? Actually, they start a business. They really start a business. They've got a vision, an idea. They start a business. I mean, you're talking about something that's infinitesimally small. You'd be looking at, one in every several thousand will be doing it. And again, they're nearly all white and nearly all highly educated people anyway. So, if you look at on the balance of probability, you've got some genius computer programmer or something, white guy who's obviously achieved to the top levels of education and accomplishment and so on, and then that guy is likely to do something entrepreneurial and exciting and maybe new technological frontiers. But again, those people are infinitesimal. Even if you had, the only people you want are people who got masters or postgrad masters or PhD from a first world country, and where you haven't bribed someone to get it, where you do an independent test to speak English and all that sort of stuff. Even there, you'd have hardly anybody. I mean, you'd be lucky to have, you'd be lucky to have 1 million people worldwide from the third world who would meet that criteria, worldwide, that would meet that criteria. And they could be shared amongst all the first world or upper middle income countries. But the number will be very, very small. There's not many people meet that top end criteria, and they're the ones who are going to be the entrepreneurs, and not the third world IQ 70 peasants, as the propaganda very falsely claims. You've been with Tastus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.